Welcome again to Discovering Disabilities in Dearborn. As always, I'm Ali Darwish.
I'm Rashad Al-Ghul.
Today we have the privilege of being joined by Corporal Brent King. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, Corporal Brent.
Hi, Ali. My name is Brent King. I've been a Dearborn police officer for a little over 16 years. 15 of those years were on patrol, various midnights, day shift, afternoons. I was an evidence tech, FTO, which is a field training officer, current member of the Dearborn Police Bomb Squad, and Honor Guard. I have two sons. One's 10 and one is 7. He'll be 8 next month, and my younger one has autism.
So you built up, just from the very brief introduction, you built up a very hefty resume. What got you into this field to begin with?
As far as law enforcement,
Yeah.
I wanted to help people out. My original plan was to be an anesthesiologist, actually. And then I realized how much schooling there was for that. And I said, no, I'm not going to school that long. And then I knew that I wanted to help people out and just do better for my little corner of the world that I live in. During that time, I littered the state with applications, and I put myself through college and then littered the state with applications. And I was picked up by Dearborn, and I've been here ever since.
Well, you've done a great job, definitely, of helping people out. And you mentioned that you had a younger son with autism, right?
Yes.
So was that kind of your motivation for starting initiatives in your work in disabilities?
So I listen to a lot of podcasts regarding autism. As we mentioned off air before we started, I have a long commute to work, so I have a lot of downtime in my car, so I just listen to podcasts a lot, including yours. But I've heard repeatedly over the years that I was listening to these podcasts that parents were concerned about their children having interactions with law enforcement. And that really broke my heart as a police officer because, like I said, all of us want to come here and help people. We don't want people to be afraid of us. And then to hear parents of people in the special needs communities fear their child having an interaction with law enforcement, I was like, there's got to be a way that we can help this and change the perspective from the parents and or the individuals with special needs. And hopefully we can make this a smoother transaction if there is ever a police interaction. So I figured out we could try to help that out.
What kind of concerns were you hearing by the public? What were people telling you in particular about concerns regarding disabilities and law enforcement?
So the biggest one, most of them always went to, I don't want my son, and most children with autism are boys. I don't want my son to be shot by the police. They always go for the biggest thing first. And I was like, that's not what we're doing, But that's what I feel was a negative interaction is if that's what people are concerned about, we need to tell them that that's not what is going to be the end game plan. We always try to talk to people first and foremost and try to calm down situations first. But if we can get ahead of the game and have people interact with law enforcement before there's a need to interact with law enforcement, for example, bringing people to the police department on their own terms to introduce themselves to interact with law enforcement before there's an emergency, that'll put the parents at ease and it'll help the individual with disabilities have a better understanding what law enforcement's about.
So what I'm getting from this is your initiatives kind of started before you had your son, right?
He was born in, so he was diagnosed at that point because that's when I started listening to the autism podcast, just to start learning about the world that I had fallen into.
What's his name?
My son's name is Braden.
Braden.
Yep.
Okay.
And like I said, he's 7, almost 8. He is severely cognitively impaired, autistic, and epileptic.
Okay.
So he's got a lot going on. He attends school year-round, and he does ABA therapy, which ABA therapy is applied behavioral analysis therapy.
Does he enjoy the things that he does, going to school, ABA therapy?
He loves it.
He enjoys them?
He absolutely loves it. This morning, he does not attend school on Friday mornings during the summertime. So he does go to school year-round. On Fridays, he does not attend school. But instead, the therapist comes to our house extra early. So this morning, he was actually sitting in his therapy room waiting for the therapist before she showed up.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
he looks forward to it.
He loves it.
Is it the same therapist every time?
So we have 2 therapists, and they switch on and off throughout the week. And then both of them show up on Friday. The one comes early and one comes later.
Awesome.
So I know, so there seems to be a lot of overlap between the different disabilities that he has. Is it, and this is something that you see our Instagram page, we make these, infographics and these different posts about various disabilities. I don't know if you had a chance to check out our Instagram.
I'm not on social media too
Okay,
often,
okay.
but I've seen it.
So oftentimes you have these comorbid or overlapping disabilities. Was autism the first one diagnosed, or was it the cognitive impairment that was diagnosed first? Which
So they were diagnosed all together,
Okay.
except for the epilepsy that came later. And I tried to like get that doctor to tell me like it's 50-50, it's 60-40, it's 70-30, and he just wouldn't do it. And I understand now, because I know more about his disabilities and things of that nature, that he can't really solidify a number for me. So I don't know what the differences are.
So with Braden and his various disabilities, what resources have you come across or have you found to be very helpful?
So my wife is very active on social media, as with a lot of people are nowadays. So we started reaching out to like autism groups on Facebook. That was our first step, was just reaching out to autism Facebook groups. And then Autism Alliance of Michigan is a huge network that we've come to love. And then I started listening to podcasts, found some podcasts, Turn Autism Around by Mara Barbera, the Autism Dad podcast, Autism Point of View, Springbrook's Converge Autism Radio is the name of that one. And then All Autism Talk are a couple of the podcasts that I listen to. All of them have shared great information, and that's, again, where I've started learning the fears of other parents with children with autism and their interactions with law enforcement. And then through my time here in Dearborn and then doing research online, I came across Blue Hands United, which I've heard you guys mention several times on the podcast before. Mona and Miriam, I love them both. They're great,
Amazing
and they're
people.
doing amazing work for Dearborn.
Yeah,
That's actually, go ahead.
I was going to say that we recorded an episode with Mariam, which will be released soon, and so yeah, it's great the work that they do. It's inspiring to the whole community, and hopefully we have a lot to learn from people like you. And you said you're listening to these podcasts and learning a lot. I'm confident that people are going to listen to this podcast and extract a lot of things from it as well. But speaking about our podcasts, could we go back a little bit and tell us a little bit about which ones that you watched, that you enjoyed? Which episodes did you interact with from our podcast?
I've listened to all of them, just kind of like more research of what I was getting myself into being here.
Awesome.
But I really did enjoy all of them. And the fact that you guys break it down to really the different disabilities that are in the community and bringing light to those individuals. I know that the special needs communities, they can't always advocate for themselves. And that's also what drives me to do this. My son is 7 years old. He's not potty trained. He's nonverbal. So he can't tell us what his problems are. So somebody needs to advocate for him. And like I said, mentioning before with the fears of these other parents, I feel that I'm in that position perfectly because I'm in law enforcement and I'm a dad of an autistic individual. So I feel that I meet that criteria and can help out as best I can.
So we actually met you at the Light It Up Blue event this year. That
Yes,
Blue
you
Hands
did.
United
Absolutely.
holds. Based on, considering that, right, and you being there and you went up and spoke on the podium, how has your outreach been kind of to the community, through that event, of course, but like what other events do you participate in and kind of, use as a way to advocate for disabilities?
So we did a fundraiser where we were selling T-shirts, patches, coins, all with Dearborn insignia on it, and then like the puzzle piece.
Homecoming? Was this in Homecoming or no?
So Blue Hands United did sell my shirts there as well.
Yeah, I saw them there.
I was actually not there, but I helped them set up their booth, and I was like, hey, would you guys mind selling some T-shirts for me? And they're like, we'd love to.
Yeah,
So,
their table was full of things.
Yep, and she actually told me, she's like, your stuff's selling better than our stuff. So, thank you, Mona. But we raised almost $6,000 for the T-shirts in our fundraiser. So the Dearborn Police Officers Charity kicked in the extra money to make it an even $6,000, and then we donated half to Blue Hands United and half to Autism Alliance of Michigan. So through that fundraiser, to get to your question, people have my email address, and they email me, just random individuals that live in Dearborn, unfortunately now all of them have been moms of special needs sons, asking for help. So when they do reach out to me, I can then again tell them who I am, and then get a better feel for what they need, and then I can turn them over to the right community assistants to get them more help. Most of the time I do turn them over to Blue Hands United, but there has been times where I've called Autism Alliance of Michigan myself to kind of explain the situation to them and then turn them over to the individual or family that needs the assistance.
Awesome. Was this your first fundraiser?
This
Like
was my
year?
first fundraiser,
Awesome.
yeah, first year, first fundraiser. It was kind of pushed upon me, but I took it and ran with it.
Did a great job.
So, yep.
So we talked a good deal about Blue Hands United, but you're bringing up Autism Alliance a lot. Could you tell us a little bit more about exactly what they do?
So Autism Alliance of Michigan is basically just a bigger Blue Hands United. They're statewide, and we really learned about them through these Facebook autism groups, and then we took advantage of their kindness, basically, and they had autism like days out at Greenfield Village. So they would allow families with special needs individuals to come in early during like a time where the lights are turned down and the sound's turned down, so there's not as much stimulation to help relax the individuals with autism. And those tickets were free, and we all know how much Greenfield Village cost. So we took advantage of that for like holiday nights and Halloween nights, things of that nature. And then they did have like days out with Thomas the Train. Both of my sons still love Thomas the Train, so yeah, it's great.
I still love Thomas the Train.
Who doesn't? I grew up with him too.
It's fantastic that we have these different organizations that we're connected with as a community who are, who normalize these things that people with disabilities would otherwise not be able to participate in, or they'd feel excluded in. So it's really nice to hear that they're doing these different initiatives for them.
Yep. And then Autism Alliance Michigan also hosts like seminars. So they have keynote speakers and breakout sessions, and I've been to like 3 or 4 of them, and every one of them has been fantastic.
So when a parent reaches out to Autism Alliance or you guys asking for various resources, what do these various resources look like? What exactly are you hearing from the community that is being requested, like for their children?
Sadly enough, the biggest thing that I'm seeing that the community wants is just somebody to talk to. The autism world is very lonely, and not because there's not other people out there. I think the prevalency rate's about 1 in 44 now. But we're so busy trying to find resources for our sons and daughters that we don't have time to have a social life. So they really, like, when I talk to these parents on the phone, like, I'll spend an hour on the phone with them, and they're just basically telling me their life story, and just it feels like they just didn't have somebody to talk to. And then finally we get, through that communication there, and then I'm able to turn them over to resources that'll give them a break, the caregivers a break, or find somebody that can get them ABA therapy. Or we had one little kid who he elopes, which is basically running away. He likes to elope, so we were trying to figure out, like, could we get this kid a GPS tracker, like sewn into his clothes or in his shoe or something, so that mom wouldn't have to worry about, like, when he does try to elope. And she's done a phenomenal job of trying to lock and secure her house. The woman has other children in the house who sometimes leave the doors unlocked. So the young boy with autism, he elopes and then obviously causes an issue, and then mom has to go find him. So assistance in trying to find that. I've told her, different kind of door locks that make it harder for the other kids to forget to unlock, or lock, I should say. And then, like I said, the GPS trackers. But a lot of it is just resources to help them through this. Somebody to talk to, government support, things of that nature.
So we spoke a lot about, other organizations and resources in the community for others, but can we talk a little bit more about your work within the police department and how you have advocated for certain changes in the police department that do obviously affect the community, but things that you kind of pushed for and you started.
Absolutely. So I have trained every officer in the Dearborn Police Department in autism. It's obviously a spectrum. So when there's a specific question about, well, how do we interact with a person who does this? And I always come back with, it is a spectrum. So every interaction with everybody has been different. One thing I did learn on one of my autism podcasts is if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, because they're all unique. And I try to really accentuate that idea that they're interacting with that one person, and what may work for this individual person may not work for another person. Like I said, my son's with autistic, nonverbal, cognitively impaired. You can tell him to do anything that you think a 7-year-old will be able to do, and he's not going to do it because he's not going to listen to you. And then you can flip over and tell a 7-year-old who's on a different end of the spectrum, and he'll listen to you. So you really have to, and we are trained that way, like evaluate the situation that you're in and adjust accordingly. One of the things that I learned in a general order that we do have is that approximately 50% of the mental health individuals with mental health issues are nonverbal. Okay, so I brought up using a core board, which is a piece of paper that has, we used several different sizes, but the 108 is our most prominent one. So it has 108 different tiles on it that have pictures and words that correspond with those pictures, and you just simply point to that tile, and that's what you're trying to explain to the other individual. So you can basically point out using pictures a sentence.
Is that what you have over there?
This is what I do have in front of me. This is a smaller one, 36 board, and this is a 108 here. This board here is actually the one my son had when they first started using core boards at school. We have now a fancier version. It's an iPad. So when he points on something, it'll actually jump to another screen. So, for instance, if he was to select shows, it would jump to another screen that has 6 of his favorite shows on there, and then he could point to that, and it actually verbalizes what he points at when he says it.
Cool.
So this is one thing that came out of that general order, and then I turned that into using it with our 911 ready bags to help alleviate the miscommunication when there is an individual that is nonverbal. Sometimes it does work. It does take years for people to learn how to use the core board, but if it doesn't work, that's okay. We also have one in Arabic as well. That's awesome. It's also translated. And then this is our simplest one, because really here, this is what we're trying to figure out 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Where's your mom and dad, and where do you live?
So every police officer carries this?
So these are all available in our Power DMS system, and we have access to that on our phones.
Okay.
And then these are all going to be in our 911 ready bags as well. So not every officer has a 911 ready bag. We're trying to get more of them as we speak, but we have a lot of them on the road at any given point.
What else does the 911 ready bag have?
So inside the 911 ready bags, we have earmuffs, because a lot of people with autism have sound sensitivity. So obviously police cars, fire trucks, they all come with pretty flashing lights and loud sirens. And that's one thing I pressed upon our officers that are responding to individuals with autism is try to kill your sirens when you're down the block instead of when you're right in front of the house. Also, importantly, when you're pulling up to a house that the individual may be epileptic, try to remember to kill your lights for the midnight officers to kill your lights before you show up on scene, because you may inadvertently send them into a seizure. But we have the earmuffs, and then we have these little fidget. This is a monkey noodle, so it's really just an elasticy noodle for somebody to play with and when they're stressed out. This is a little Lego chew toy. Basically, like my son, he has a lot of oral sensation issues, so he's always chewing on something. And we find that it helps calm people down there as well. This is just a different little fidgety thing for kids to play with. And then this weighted blanket, as well as a 5-pound weighted blanket. And it really just provides that comfortable, if you will, hug to calm people down. We can, if somebody was in an accident, we can give them the earmuffs and the weighted blanket and have them have a seat in the back of our police car where it's safer than being on the side of Ford Road at Mercury where there was just a rollover accident for the 10th time that day.
So I actually have a couple questions about this. First off, are these all part of the training? Like how to use them or what to use them for?
Yes. So during my training session, it was a 2-hour block of training during in-service, which was in the spring. I taught them all about these 911 Ready bags. These 911 Ready bags are from Mimi's Mission, which I believe is in Woodhaven. Not sure on that. So, but it's Mimi's Mission, and we purchased them from Mimi's Mission, and anybody can really buy these from Mimi's Mission. And they can keep them for themselves or donate them to a charity of their choosing. But they are great bags to have. And police departments around the Downriver community, for the most part, are using these Mimi Mission 911 Ready bags.
Is Mimi Mission dedicated to persons with disabilities?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. And my second question was, so you mentioned police officers knowing when they go to a house that somebody with a disability might be in there. How do they know that exactly?
So Dearborn has a special needs registry, and people can sign on if they just search Dearborn Police Department and then go to online services. The special needs registry is right there, and they can fill that out and give us as much information as they wish to. We ask for as much information as they could possibly provide to give us more information to better respond to a scene. But it's totally up to them as much information as they wish. So it's not just for autism, it's for any special needs, Alzheimer's, diabetes, you name it. Anybody with a special needs, they can sign on to the special needs registry and give us that information. And then when either that phone number or that address is flagged for calling 911 or calling dispatch in general, that file will be pulled up and then it can be sent to the officers that are responding. And like I said, this will give us information of, is there an epileptic hazard there? Is this person combative because they're under the influence of drugs or narcotics? Or is it because they're diabetic and their blood sugar is low?
Does this also apply to vehicles? Like, could vehicles be registered under this, or is that like a different system that you guys have?
I don't know.
So because what I heard was at the Blue Hands United event, there are sometimes like preemptive measures taken by parents with autism of putting certain labels on their vehicles to indicate that when a police officer comes, they'll recognize this label and know to turn off his sirens, for example. So I thought that maybe there's something like that in the registry for.
So for the registry, I wouldn't think that would work because we don't know who's in the car.
Oh, true.
So, but at the Lighted Up Blue event, as you were referring to, we had stickers out there from Mimi's Mission that they're yellow stickers, I don't know, probably about 4 inches by 6 inches that you can fix to the back of your car window, lower left corner. We asked that the lower left corner, you put the sticker there because most officers are coming up from behind the vehicle on the driver's side. So it's a yellow sticker, and it basically spells out that there's an individual with autism in that vehicle, or maybe in that vehicle, and then a couple of factors of may not respond accordingly, may run for unknown reasons. So it really does give the officer the heads up. We have also, the Dearborn Police Officers Charity purchased a whole bunch of seatbelt covers that say autism on them, and then there's a little medical alert piece of paper inside that you can write some information down as well, in case mom or dad or whoever was the driver is incapacitated due to an accident or anything else, then we can still figure out what's going on with the passenger if they're autistic.
So if our viewers watching this at home are interested in getting their hands on these stickers or seatbelt covers, how do they go about doing that?
They can contact Mimi's Mission. They're the ones that were selling the stickers and the seatbelt covers. They can also contact me. My email address is B as in boy, King, King, at ci.dearborn.mi.us.
How did the special needs registry come to be? How did it start?
That actually started years ago. I guess we didn't do a real good job of pushing it out to the general public. But it started years ago. I don't know the driving force behind it, but it was just a way for us to better prepare for responding to individuals' houses.
Well, it's definitely more well known now. I think since you and others started pushing for disabilities and advocating. So, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is probably a good time for us to take our break.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you or someone you know would be interested in being a guest on the podcast, or if you have any feedback, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at DreamDearborn, or on our website at dreamdearborn.org, or on our email at disabilitiesproject@umich.edu. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, to Discovering Disabilities in Dearborn. One thing we noticed over our break is we talked about the 911 Ready Bag and the contents inside. But for the viewers who are listening through the podcast, just jump on our YouTube channel to see what we were talking about more specifically. Also, off line, we were talking about your other son. Could you tell us a little bit about him and his experience of having a younger brother who's autistic, cognitively impaired, and has epileptic episodes?
My older son is 10. His name's Brendan. He's been a great big brother to Braden. He's advocated to his friends about the differences that they experience when they come to our house to play with Brendan, because Braden, he likes to scream a lot and does things differently than normal people would. So he just calmly explains to his buddies what's going on and why he's doing that. And basically at the end of the story, or him explaining, he goes, he's autistic. That's the way he is. And he's a big advocate for him. He's wise above his years. He's missed out on a lot of his childhood because of that, because there are things that we can't do as a family with a severely autistic individual. And that Brendan has missed out on that, and I can't praise him enough for that. We've received so many compliments from friends and families and neighbors about my older son's behavior and the way he presents himself, and I believe that is because he's had to grow up a little faster than a normal child would.
Well, I will say he's definitely doing a great job of being an older brother, and in terms of missing out on some things, it's never too late, to go out and enjoy life and have fun. I actually recently went to Disney World, and I didn't think I was going to have fun before I went, but I had a blast when I went. So whether it's, a few years down the line, or even when Brendan goes on and gets married in the future and has his own family, I'm sure he'll come to have that fun. Sooner or later.
That's the top of his list is Disney.
Yeah. And I'm sure he's developing all these different experiences that many others wouldn't experience by not having the same experiences that he's developed with Braden. So it's a trade-off. He's gonna miss out on certain things, but he's also gaining amazing experiences through being a selfless individual. So yeah, no, amazing job. How about you guys, just as parents? How was the adjustment with Braden, and how do you reflect back now?
It obviously, like I said, when he was diagnosed, we didn't really know what was going on. The doctor actually said severely cognitively impaired, and at that time I didn't really even understand what that meant. And he's in a SCI classroom, which is severely cognitively impaired, at a special school. And like I said, he goes year round. So we don't get the normal summer break, where we can go do whatever we want, is because he's going to school year round. So we do miss out on a lot of things like that. Functions where there's a lot of people, he doesn't do well at. He gets overstimulated, and then he starts kind of panicking, if you will. So family functions, holiday parties, or birthday parties, larger birthday parties, we can't stay long at. And then also when there's a lot of things on tables, he just grabs things off tables. So he's always spilling, when we go to a party, he's always spilling drinks or pulling things off tables. One time he broke a wine glass, and I was like, oh, I told you he was going to grab that. So, but we've learned a lot. Our house is set up a little differently than the normal household. We have hardwood floors throughout the entire house because he just spills stuff all over the carpet. And then instead of a den, we have a therapy room. In the therapy room, we have a trampoline and a little workstation where him and his therapist work. And the trampoline's one of his rewards because he loves jumping up and down. So he'll sit or jump up and down in there while he's watching an episode of Mickey Mouse or something along that lines. So we've had to curtail like our life expectancies, and like the things that we want to do, but all for the better.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about your other experiences with other individuals, like maybe pulling over an individual with a child who had disabilities. Could you talk a little bit about those experiences, or if you've heard about such experiences?
So I have a couple of my own, and then real quick, I wanted to touch on one that an officer told me. He was in the neighborhood of Telegraph and Cherry Hill and pulled over a woman, and she wanted the officer to yell at and be the bad guy to her child who is autistic. And he did not do that. He's like, no, we're here to help out everybody. We're not here to be the bad guys. So she was trying to use the police officers to scare the child into being a good child. And the officer told her, like, I'm not going to do that.
That's done pretty often. Like
it is. It's done a lot more often than I'd care to admit.
Yeah.
And we try to impress upon everybody that, like, we're here to help you. Like, if you're lost or separated from your family, when we're talking to children, if you're lost or separated from your family, come find us. Like, we're here to help you. And so when parents try to use us as a scare tactic, it's not what we want. We want to be friends to the children and help them in their time of need. One of my personal experiences, though, was I had made a traffic stop on a woman on Michigan Avenue, and she was actually driving home from the doctor's office where her son was diagnosed with autism. And she was a wreck. She was just like I was when I found out that my son had autism, and all of his other issues. So she was crying and apologizing for the way she was driving, which was the reason that I pulled her over. And then after verifying who she was and everything like that, because she hardly had any paperwork with her, I went back up to the car and actually gave her my autism awareness bracelet that I had on my wrist, and I told her, welcome to the family. Like, you're going to need to be a big, strong mama bear here and take care of your son. You're going to have to advocate strongly for your son, for everything you need for your son. And it's only going to be you that's going to do it. Nobody else is going to do it for you. I said, but if you need help, give us a call. We'll help you out.
What was her reaction?
She cried more. She said, thank you very much. She held my hand for a few minutes and just praised me and thanked me, and then just cried more. So I told her, I said, you can stay here as long as you want. I will stay behind you with my lights on for as long as you need. Collect yourself, and when you're ready, just give me a thumbs up out the window and then pull off. And wow. So it took her a couple minutes to collect herself, and then eventually she was able to pull off and go on her way.
Have you ever seen her or anybody else that you pulled over who has somebody in the car with a disability at like any of the events or anything that you've been through?
I have not seen her since, and then there are some interactions that we've had with families around the area that I have seen at the Blue Hands United events, and I don't know if they recognize me or not, but I recognize them, and so usually I try to like let them approach me first. I don't want to let them know that they had police contact first.
I'm sure if you see her, she'd be wearing that wristband that you gave her.
I'm sure she would be. Yep. So yeah, she was very touched by the interaction.
It's nice that there are officers like you who are compassionate and trauma informed and disabilities informed, so that when they pull over somebody who is going through these different experiences, they're more sympathetic and understanding of where they're coming from. And you talked about your training earlier, and you're creating other officers like that who are prepared in this regard. Could you tell us a little bit about how extensive this training is, and if you have any plans of branching out maybe in the future?
So kind of in the infancy of training in Dearborn here, like I said, I trained all of the Dearborn Police Department back in the spring, and I actually trained, I forgot to mention earlier, that I also trained all the lifeguards for the Dearborn Parks and Rec, because most autistic individuals love water. It's actually the number one killer amongst autistic kids is water. 90% of the deaths in the young ages is from drowning. So passing that information along to lifeguards, my son's included, he loves water. He will run to any body of water. He does not know how to swim. So passing that information on the lifeguards I felt was important, and thankfully the Parks and Rec department. They reached out to me and asked me, because they found out about the training I did for the police department, and they asked if I would curtail the training that I did for the police officers and change it up a little bit to the lifeguards. So we did that also in the spring, just before summer started for the summer pool kickoff. During the training with the police officers, I gathered some information from Dearborn Public Schools that there are approximately 2,000 students in the Dearborn Public Schools that have an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. And then there are 160-ish students in the Dearborn Public Schools that are moderate to severe autism. And then there's 50-ish that are in the SXI and the SCI classrooms. And SXI is multiple impairments, and then the SCI is the severely cognitively impaired programs. So taking just those numbers of just the students that we have in our city, it really shows you the amount of individuals out there that have disabilities, and that's just within the school district. That's not including the academies or the homeschooled individuals or adults that are located in the city of Dearborn. So I really, doing my research for the training, I really found out that it was a much needed training, and the training that for autism specific can be transferred to other disabilities as well.
Yeah.
It's just like you said earlier, just trying to be more compassionate and trying to give them the benefit of the doubt for that extra moment or two, as much as you can give them to help them respond and react to the situation and try to calm them down before we have to do anything else. So again, we're doing the training with the lifeguards and the police officers. Mona and Miriam from Blue Hands United have reached out to me to see if I would be interested in doing training for other jurisdictions around us, Dearborn Heights, Canton, Detroit PD. Those are all in their infancy stages. We're working on trying to get that together. But yes, other departments are catching on to this and wanting to do training as well.
Hopefully it can be nationwide after this.
That would be phenomenal, yes. Autism Alliance of Michigan does have a presentation, a training for law enforcement specific, and I will be taking that as soon as it's ready.
Beautiful. I really appreciate how you have like numbers like these, because that's something that we're trying to ascertain as a disabilities research, education, and advocacy a movement, organization, dream. Beyond this podcast, what we're doing is we're trying to understand intellectual disabilities and how it's affecting our community, and we're trying to quantify, the prevalence of these issues and how it's affecting the quality of life. So I just like hearing the numbers behind things, because it kind of shows that these are real issues that people are experiencing in our community.
Absolutely. That's why I try to pull numbers like that. I'm a police officer. I like concrete evidence. So when you tell me your feelings, that's one thing. But if you can give me numbers, then I'll know the severity of the situation.
So we've talked a lot about you going out to the community, reaching out to the community, but what about others coming to you on the basis of, have you seen anybody with a disability trying to become a police officer?
I've not seen myself, anybody with a disability becoming a police officer. There are qualifications that need to be met to be a police officer, obviously. MCOLS is our governing body for that, Michigan Coalition of Law Enforcement. So you have to pass a reading writing test with a certain score, and then you have to do physical agility tests, certain scores for that as well. And those are different for age groups and male, females. And then you have to pass the police academy as well, which is 16 weeks of rigorous training. It's 16 straight weeks. So you got to be able to pass all that.
So I know we talked about the special needs registry and all these other services that you guys are doing an amazing job providing individuals with disabilities. But do you guys have any other initiatives or policies that you are setting forth for people with disabilities?
We're really just trying to reach out and let people of all disabilities know that we're here to help them out. We're trying to get the special needs registry out and let people know about that. That way, when we are responding, we can respond accordingly. We were talking about having like an open house, so people with disabilities could come, like I said, in a non-stressful, open, inviting setting, and allow people to interact with law enforcement and see the different operations that we have at the police station. This would be just something that we could do for anybody. To come in and, like I said, in a non-threatening manner, just come on in and meet the police.
So you said other disabilities, so this applies to anyone. I know because the focus over here was largely on autism, but it's nice to hear that you guys are doing things for all kinds of disabilities.
Yep. Yeah, we're trying to be all inclusive and help everybody out that's in the community.
So we usually like to end off our podcast with what we call the dream segment. And basically during this segment, we ask, what is your dream? And this can be your dream related to anything at all. So yeah, what is your dream?
So I would say my dream would be for more long-term care facilities for people with special needs that aren't able to care for themselves. That's one of my biggest fears of when I pass away or when I'm old enough that I can no longer care for my son. Who's going to care for him? And during my research for all of this, I found that in 1997, there was approximately 3,000 adult beds for the mental health, people with mental health issues. And then there were about 700 children beds in 97.
Is that out of those 2,100 or?
Nope, on top of. At least that was my understanding of the numbers. In, I believe it was 2016, there was a comparison. The number for adult beds was down to 2,197, and there were only 276 children beds. So the numbers have drastically been reduced. And I was listening to yet a different podcast just last week, and they were talking about the amount of long-term care facilities for the elderly in specific, and they were saying that 50% of them were going to be closing due to COVID in the next year. So that compounds that problem with who's going to take care of the aging special needs communities and the elderly population. So my dream would be to have government fund that fully so that there is hope for people in my situation, for my loved ones, to have long-term care after I pass away or I'm no longer able to care for my own son.
Well, thank you for that amazing dream and for an amazing episode. There you guys have it, Discovering Disabilities in Dearborn with Corporal Brent King. Thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you, gentlemen.
That dream, by the way, I hope becomes a reality.
I hope so, too.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to all our viewers for watching at home. Make sure you follow us on our social media, Dream Dearborn on Instagram and Facebook, and check out our website, dreamdearborn.org. And we'll see you on the next episode.
And YouTube, Dream Dearborn as well.